All right. So, again, my name is Ellen Dunn. I am the program director and social worker here at Alzheimer's Services. I'm also here with our program coordinator, Brooke Keto, and we are going to talk with you guys today about becoming Alzheimer's aware. All right. So before we really get into the meat of the presentation, in case anybody is new to our organization, I would like to just do a quick intro of Alzheimer's Services and who are we and what do we do here in our community. So we are a local nonprofit agency. We service the greater Baton Rouge area along with 10 other parishes. Our mission is to teach, care for, and connect with those in our community. And our goal really is to provide support and education for those diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease and other forms of dementia and their caregivers as well. So that's for anybody who is new to Alzheimer's Services. Maybe this is your first event today, or maybe people who have been coming to things, and it's always good to just have a little refresher. So let's talk a little bit about today's goals, what we want to get accomplished through this presentation today. So today, I hope to really establish for you guys the importance of monitoring our brain health, the importance of learning statistical reality as well. We'll also talk about the difference between Alzheimer's and dementia. We'll talk about some warning signs. We'll also talk about some good news in research that's being done. We will talk about how to be proactive in your brain health. And then we hope through this presentation, hence the title, that you would feel that you become more Alzheimer's aware by listening to what we share today. And then we'll kind of close out today by sharing some resources for help. Also, too, I encourage you guys to share any questions you think of in the chat. And Brooke and I will get to those at the end. All right, so before I start on really talking about some warning signs and things like that, I want to go over some statistics. I think it's really important that we understand the depth of this diagnosis and how prevalent it really is in the community that we live in and in the country that we live in as well. So from the years 2000 to 2019, deaths from heart disease decreased from about 7.3%. But at the same time, deaths from Alzheimer's disease have increased by 145%, which is kind of a scary statistic. And you can really see how much growth we're seeing. And so that's why it's so important to to understand what we're going to share with you guys today. So here's just some 2023 facts and figures related to Alzheimer's disease specifically. So right now, the statistic is that every 1 in 3 seniors dies with a diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease or another form of dementia. Alzheimer's is also currently listed as the 7th leading cause of death in our country, and it's the 5th leading cause of death with the age 65 and older. Now, pre-COVID, it was listed as the 6th leading cause of death, but now we've seen a change down to the 7th leading cause because COVID has made its way to the 4th leading cause of death in our country. Research also shows that the process of developing a dementia diagnosis begins about 10 to 20 years in our brain prior to when we first see those outward signs of the disease. There is an estimated 6.7 million Americans living with Alzheimer's disease, and by the year 2050, the number is projected to rise to nearly 13 million. And this is contributed with baby boomers aging and things like that. All right, just a few other statistics that are good to be aware of. Every 65 seconds, someone in the United States is developing Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's disease also is killing more people than breast cancer and prostate cancer combined. There's billions of hours and dollars worth of care and professionals and at-home care being done as well. And Alzheimer's and dementia deaths have increased by 17% during the COVID-19 pandemic. And then you can see on the left-hand column just some of those numbers of how expensive and taxing this disease is on our country. and why it's so important that we that are professionals and we that are caregivers are advocating for an increase of resources, an increase of funding, and all those different types of things, because obviously we need the help. Here's some statistics just for our state alone. So there are about 90,000 plus in Louisiana that are 65 and older living with the diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease. About 13.6% of individuals the age 45 and older have cognitive decline. There are about 204,000 family caregivers that are bearing the burden every day of caring for a loved one with Alzheimer's disease or another form of dementia. There's about 318 million hours of unpaid care that family caregivers are providing. And then $3.9 billion of unpaid care that's being provided by those family caregivers. And Alzheimer's disease alone costs about $765 million to the state's Medicaid. All right, so we're going to wrap up the statistics and really move into some of the educational part of this presentation. So let's talk a little bit about what is the difference between Alzheimer's disease and dementia. So first, it's good to understand what exactly is dementia and how do we define it. So dementia is defined as brain failure. It's an umbrella term, which we're going to get into on the next slide. But if you think about whenever a person is diagnosed with dementia, essentially what that's saying is our brain is just not acting in the way it used to. It's not firing all cylinders. It's not as quick and recall as it used to. Maybe you can see some shrinkage through scans, things like that, but it's kind of an all-encompassing term to mean brain failure. So I think this is a really good way to understand dementia. So dementia is a broad term, an umbrella term to describe a set of symptoms. Now, a good way to kind of think about it like this, and we actually watched a presentation this morning that described it in a similar way. So I think a lot of people would be more familiar with, like, if you think about cancer, if you're diagnosed with cancer, your doctor's going to want to find exactly in your body, where is this cancer occurring? And they're going to pinpoint it and treat that exact location, that exact area. So if you think about dementia kind of in a similar way, so you can see here, it's that umbrella at the top encompassing all these different forms of dementia. And then the other forms fall underneath that umbrella. So you can see the big square to the left is Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's disease is the most commonly diagnosed form of dementia. And then when you think about Alzheimer's, there are two different types of Alzheimer's diagnoses. So there's the young onset, which is anything under the age of 65. And then there's a late onset, which is classified as anything over the age of 65. There's also vascular dementias, which can sometimes be a result of a lack of oxygen to the brain, so maybe by stroke, heart attack, things like that. There's Lewy body dementia, which a lot of times people with Lewy body dementia may experience hallucinations, really challenging realities. And then there's frontotemporal lobe dementias or frontotemporal lobe degeneration. And this is really when there's damage to that frontal lobe, those temporal lobes on the side. And then you can kind of see some of those other dementias. Some of the ones we might hear often are Parkinson's related dementia, maybe drug and alcohol induced dementia. Those are some other common ones we might see. All right. So now we're going to talk about Alzheimer's disease specifically and exactly what's happening in the brain when we're developing Alzheimer's. So you can see in the pictures on the left, A and B. So A, we see those pretty purple, healthy neurons. And then if we look in B, you can see the development of those amyloid plaques and those tangles. So you can see those pretty purple neurons now have the scratchy lines through them, and then those dark brown deposits just all over the brain. And so basically, this is what's causing that shrinking. And this is specific to Alzheimer's alone, the develop of these plaques and tangles. And then you can see too in diagram C, where that's really what a healthy brain looks like. And then the shrinkage caused by those plaques and tangles can cause the brain with maybe a severe diagnosis to look like that on the right. So just a couple of things just to note, good things to know about Alzheimer's disease specifically. So it was originally discovered in 1906 by a doctor named Aloysius Alzheimer, who's a German physician. That's hence the name Alzheimer's disease. And he first actually discovered this in a 55-year-old female patient. And then upon her death, he was able to do an autopsy and really got to analyze those plaques and tangles that had developed in her brain. All right. So I think a lot of us think about is what's normal aging, what's not normal, and how do I know when I should feel concerned? So one thing that's important to know is memory loss is a natural form of aging. As we age, we are just going to naturally forget things. But when we get more into this presentation, we'll talk about when does it become different? When should I be concerned? And when is it not just normal memory loss? And early detection is key. That's something we really want to stress here today, is the sooner you can have a diagnosis of dementia detected, the sooner you can be proactive in your own care or in your loved one's care. All right. So now I'm going to get into the 10 warning signs of dementia and kind of give you some tips and things to know what to look for if you become concerned that maybe someone in your life is maybe going to be in the future diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. So kind of like I was talking about on the last slide, memory loss. So this is not just regular memory loss. This is not, I lost my keys, I can't find my phone. This is memory loss that's really, really impactful to our day-to-day. So this would be memory loss that really disrupts our overall quality of life. So that would be things like forgetting appointments, maybe that we have scheduled, or forgetting big events. Or maybe I'm driving to a destination I've been going to my whole life and I forget how to get there. Or maybe I'm making my family's favorite recipe for Christmas dinner and I can't remember the ingredients. Or maybe I mix up 2 ingredients, something like that, that's really, really impactful. Or maybe even sometimes I'll walk into a room and I recognize the people in this room, but I just can't think of their names and maybe they're my own family. And so really, really impactful memory loss. A good rule of thumb we like to tell families is like, if you find yourself forgetting, but maybe you recall it a couple hours later, that's probably okay. That's pretty normal forgetfulness. But really that impactful memory, that won't come back later on. So number 2, difficulty performing familiar tasks. If a person is going to be diagnosed with a dementia diagnosis, those daily tasks just become a little more difficult. If anybody is a current caregiver, you can completely relate to this. You can understand how things that used to be very simple to your loved one are now really difficult. So these would be really simple things like maybe changing a light bulb, or kind of some of those things I talked about in my first example, maybe preparing a meal, microwaving a quick dish. Maybe instead of putting the microwave on the 1:30 that I've done my whole life, maybe I microwave for 5 minutes and I melt the whole plastic. Or maybe it's now really difficult for me to clean my house in the way that I always have. So just difficulty performing those familiar tasks. Number 3, problems with language. I think this is one of the most challenging warning signs that we see, because when we cannot communicate with our loved ones, the people that we're closest to, that adds a whole nother layer of difficulty on top of the challenges we're already going through, on top of them forgetting things, on top of them getting lost, on top of them misplacing common items. Now I can't even talk to them about it. Now we can't even figure out situations together. So this would be things like problems finding the right word. Maybe we really find ourselves saying things over and over, asking the same questions repeatedly. Maybe we're kind of slow on our thoughts and our words. Our recall is really challenging. Or a lot of times we use the phrase word salad, where maybe your loved one will say a sentence and like all of the words in that sentence are really jumbled, they're misplaced. So they've been kind of mixed up like a salad. So number 4, disorientation to time and place. Also something, if you're a current caregiver, you have seen this for sure. keeping track of time and date is really, really difficult for a person with dementia. It's hard to know if it's daytime, if it's nighttime. We see this a lot with people who experience sundowning. It's hard to know if it's the wintertime or it's the summertime. And so we really lose track of those dates, seasons, and the passing of time. Trouble understanding if things are happening immediately, or if they're not, and if they're not happening immediately, it's hard to like think forward or track back to something. A lot of times too, we'll see trouble with like where and how they got here. Like they'll be comfortable in a situation and all of a sudden they're like, where am I? Where's my wife? I'm ready to go home. Or we'll see them having trouble finding their way. Maybe they're in their own house and they can no longer find the bathroom that they've always known where it is. So disorientation to time and place. Or another thing we might see too is maybe it's the dead of summer in Louisiana and your loved one comes out with a winter coat on and a hat because they're unclear as to what time of the year is it. So that's disorientation to time and place. Number 5, poor or decreased judgment. So we see this a lot of times in their ability to make decisions. So one thing that's really common in the news right now is scammers. Any of us are susceptible to scammers. This is not just for the aging population and not just for the elderly, but they're just that much more susceptible because they lose the ability to recognize, even if you clarify for them, oh, mom, that was a scammer, that's not real. In order for them to regulate that and say, oh, you're right, I should have never done that, I won't do it again, that's really difficult. So just kind of making those poor decisions. Maybe they get on Amazon or QVC and they spend a ton of money, or maybe they get a call from a loved one that maybe doesn't have their best intentions and they give them money, or just different things like that that you would consider poor or decreased judgment, things they would have never done beforehand. Number 6, problems keeping track of things. So this is going to be things like putting items, having familiar places. We've always put things and now I don't put that there. Or maybe just difficulty finding items. Sometimes this can become accusing type of behavior, accusatory behavior, because if I have dementia and I misplace my things in my own house and you come to try to help me find them, I'm not going to blame myself. I'm probably going to blame you, and I'm probably going to accuse you, because why would I lose my own things? So problems keeping track of things. And then number 7, misplacing things. These two kind of go hand in hand. So putting something down and tracking back to it, remembering, oh, I put my phone or my wallet in the drawer in the kitchen to the left of the stove. That becomes really difficult. So misplacing things is a common challenge. And a lot of families really, really find this difficult, and that's completely understandable because houses are big. There's a lot of different places you can stick things. Number 8, changes in mood or behavior. This is something that if you are a caregiver or you've taken care of a loved one with dementia before, you've probably seen this. A lot of times our loved one's mood or behavior will really shift as they develop dementia. So maybe our loved one has always been very gentle, very kind, very soft, but maybe now they use harsh language, or maybe they are very aggressive. We might see that a lot. Or maybe even sometimes they were a more aggressive person in their life. Maybe they were short in their communication, more challenging, but now maybe they're very emotional. Maybe they cry often. So we do see a lot of changes in that mood and behavior. Trouble with images and spatial relationships. So this is really an inability to really track things. So things like balance, tripping, misinterpretation of floor contrast, all of that becomes really difficult. A lot of people believe if you ever have like a black rug in your home, or like a lot of public businesses have those like black rugs, walking into them or out of them to wipe your feet on. For people with dementia, sometimes their spatial recognition is so off that they can interpret this as like a hole. And so they're afraid to take that step into it because that's scary to them. Also, too, difficulty reading, keeping track of a line on a story or something, reading a newspaper can become difficult. You think those are really tiny words. They can even be difficult for people with just vision impairment that don't have cognitive impairment. So it can be really hard to track those words. Also, judging distance and things like that can become really difficult. And then the 10th warning sign to kind of look out for would be a withdrawal from work or social activities. Sometimes our loved ones with dementia may kind of recognize that something is going on. Maybe they're not quite sure what it is, but they do recognize that everyday tasks like work or things like that can become really difficult. So sometimes what they may resort to is just withdrawing from those things instead of having to face that challenging difficulty. All right, so let's talk a little bit about some risk factors just to kind of look out for that contribute to an Alzheimer's diagnosis. So first is age. The percentage of people with Alzheimer's disease increases with age. Right now in our country, there are about 5% of people aged 65 to 74 that have an Alzheimer's diagnosis. And then about 13.1% of those diagnosed with Alzheimer's are the ages of 75 to 84. And then about 33.3% are 85 and older. So you see age is just a natural risk factor. Also, too, genetics. Researchers have found that many genes increase the risk of Alzheimer's disease. In fact, I read just yesterday that in the year 2022, researchers identified 31 new genes that appeared to affect biological processes that are known to be at play in Alzheimer's disease. As also family history. While family history is not necessary for a diagnosis of Alzheimer's, research also shows that individuals who have like a parent or a direct sibling of what they would call a first degree relative that has also had Alzheimer's disease, that can increase our risk as well. Also, cardiovascular health. Our brain health is directly affected by our heart health, which Brooke will really get into also today. And a healthy heart just really ensures that enough blood is being pumped to the brain, which then enables oxygen and nutrient-rich blood to be reaching the brain regularly. Smoking as well can increase our risk of Alzheimer's disease. And then physical activity is, and if you participate regularly in physical activity, that can really decrease our risk, but a lack of participating in physical activity can kind of increase that risk. Also, too, diet can be a risk factor. It's really important to maintain a healthy and balanced diet. And then also, too, staying socially and cognitively engaged can really, really help to reduce that risk of Alzheimer's disease and other forms of dementia. So another thing, too, that we want to talk about is when to talk to your doctor. If I'm becoming concerned, if I think I'm experiencing cognitive impairment, how would I go about this and what would be the time? So one thing is if you see your doctor every year, maybe you have them monitoring your medication, your blood pressure, things like that, you want to ask them for a yearly cognitive screening. This should be something any general practitioner should be able to work into their everyday appointment. And that way, next time you go, you can ask for this and you can establish your baseline. And so then every year when you go back, you can ask them to do that screening again, or every 6 months, whenever you do this, and see what they recommend as far as the frequency. And you can ask for that. And then that way you can kind of keep track. And then if for some reason, once you establish that baseline, if you see a change in the future, or if you or your doctor grow of concern, then maybe you could see a specialist, maybe a neurologist or something like that. You can really explore those options with your physician. And if you ever need help with this as well, recommendations to a doctor, that's something we at Alzheimer's Services can help you with too. And kind of like I said earlier, the sooner you catch it, the sooner you can talk with a doctor about how to manage your care. And then heart and brain health. Like I said, these two are directly connected. So we need to make sure that we prioritize our brain health. We need to manage our blood pressure and our blood flow. This is crucial for our ability to think, act, and live well. And we need to reduce our risk factors. If you're living in a heart healthy way, you're living in a brain healthy way. And then research shows many activities are good for the heart or good for the brain. So now I'm going to let Brooke take over and she's going to talk more about what we can do to get brain healthy.
Hello, thanks, Ellen. So as Ellen introduced me in the beginning, I'm Brooke. I'm a program coordinator here, and I work mainly with caregivers to provide education and support and resources. So I'm so happy that everybody that has joined us today is interested in becoming more Alzheimer's aware, because that allows us to further protect ourselves, but also better support and serve our loved ones as well. So now that we have taken kind of a deep dive into Alzheimer's disease and just dementia in general, let's talk about preventing it as best as possible. Likely most of us that are on this call, that's one of the reasons why we're on this call, is because we want to prevent this situation for ourselves. So we're going to talk about that. And the number one way that we can do that is by making our brain health a priority. And so I'm going to go through these different healthy habits that can protect our brain and just put us in the best place possible to prevent dementia as best we can. There is a saying that by doing the same thing, you are going to continue to get the same result. So if you're wanting a change in your brain health, if all of these things that we've been talking about are of any concern of you, then you can do some of these things, actively start participating in these things within your life and add them into your routine so that you are having actions in your life that promote a healthier brain. So some of the areas that we're going to focus on are what you see here: exercise, diet, sleep, mental activity, and stress. So the first step is exercise. We can switch the slide, Ellen. There we go. Exercise. Love this picture. They just look so happy to be stretching. So first up is exercise. So we have spoken briefly already about how any activity that is good for your heart in turn is good for your brain. This was a good mental shift in my own mind in thinking of kind of a holistic approach to your brain health, because it's not just doing crossword puzzles and keeping your brain active. It's a full approach. So by making decisions in our daily life and adding in exercise now, we can in turn promote a healthier brain. I know it is very, very easy to put off exercise. I am very guilty of that. But just adding things in as little as possible to start off with, like instead of sitting inside on your lunch break, if it's a nice day, you can go and take a walk outside. Or if your family is really dramatic on Facebook and posts a lot of stuff that stresses you out, I'm speaking from personal experience, just don't engage with that stuff and go outside, play a round of golf with your friends or hang out with your girlfriends that are going to give you positivity. And incorporate exercise within those activities. That's going to assist with your mood as well. I have a point here about aerobic exercise. Aerobic exercise is defined as with oxygen. And so any activity that increases the amount of oxygen in your brain, like dancing, walking fast, or biking, increases the amount of oxygen to your heart, which then can better bring nutrients to your brain. So aerobic exercises are a great thing to focus on. Making a conscious effort to sweat throughout the week is very important to just get rid of the gunk that builds up within our bodies. Regular and consistency is key. That's where I was saying, start off small, add in little things to your daily life so that you actually are achievably able to follow through with it. Progress is better than nothing, I like to say. And over time, those positive changes in adding in exercise and moving your body will allow more blood flow to your brain and allow for better brain functions over time, which is what we're looking for. So next up, we're going to dive into diet. Diet, of course, is critical for your brain health. I think we hear this all the time, but we live in South Louisiana, and it is so easy to, not pay attention to it as much. So I encourage you to think of it through this lens instead. Your brain controls everything that you do. Your brain controls how you move. Your brain controls how you feel. Your brain controls how you make decisions. And what you eat is the fuel for how your body is able to do these functions, which is everything. So by looking at it through that lens, we want to make the best choices possible for the food that we eat so that we can act accordingly in the best way that we can and live our lives in the most, healthy way that we can. So foods like fruits, vegetables, healthy oils like avocado oil, olive oil, and fish. Minimizing processed foods as much as possible, minimizing too many salts. Salt is healthy, but everything in moderation, and just making sure that you are thinking of it through the lens of fuel for your body. Minimizing sugars and saturated fats as best as possible. If you are looking for like specific foods or specific recipes that you would like to use as a reference, these are some studied and proven diets for brain health. The Mediterranean diet, the DASH diet, the MIND diet. So if you're like me and prefer to have like a recipe guide to look off of and then get creative after that, these are some that are studied and proven and not just some, fad diet. These are actually good ones to follow. So that is a crucial part for brain health as well. Next up, we're going to talk about sleep. Any well-functioning machine, person, any well-functioning thing requires maintenance and it requires rest. And that is what sleep is for us. Recent studies show that getting enough sleep at night allows our brain to cleanse itself or wash away proteins and just the gunk that builds up in our brain throughout the day. And sleep is deep, continual sleep is what allows your brain to cleanse itself of all of that build up throughout the day. So I like to think of it like your brain is your car on a long road trip. And whenever you get home after a long road trip, you likely have love bugs stuck on the top of your car, you have pollen, you have mud on your car. It needs a good wash. And that is what our brains are after a long, hectic day. So getting enough sleep and making it a priority is good for your overall health. When you don't get enough sleep continually, you have reduced concentration, you have reduced memory, and compounding over time, that impacts your overall health over time. It's recommended that we get between 7 and 9 hours of good sleep at night. I know that that can be really challenging. I was just saying to Ellen earlier, I have a 2-year-old. I don't know when the last time I got a full night of sleep was, but it is something that we can all strive for and make a priority as best as possible to get good sleep. If you find that you have any environmental challenges that hinder good sleep, look for solutions, be proactive about it. Sound machines can help cue your body that it's time to sleep. If you notice that you feel like your brain is wired before you go to sleep, are you having too much blue light like TV or your phone or any type of screen time right before bed that's making it difficult for you to fall asleep? Are you not having enough exercise during the day to where your body feels restless and can't, kind of level out at the end of the day and let you relax? So thinking about those things and trying to find solutions if we are having difficulty sleeping. I think it's smart to kind of take an objective approach, look at it as if you were looking at it for another person and see if there's any factors that are impairing your abilities for a restful night. If there are any factors beyond your control, which are a reality for a lot of people, like sleep apnea or side effects of a medication that you take, let that be a priority that you talk to your doctor about. While some of those things, like if it's a medication, are helping you right now, you don't want your sleep to cause problems later down the road. So just keeping that as in your mind as a priority. Next up, we're going to talk about mental activity. Keeping your brain active is as simple as socializing with a friend or listening to music that brings back memories. That's one of the points on there is reminiscence therapy. Just talking about past events is a form of mental activity, and it's so enjoyable. I think some people, when they think of mental activity, they think that they need to learn a new language or, learn how to sail. I mean, it doesn't have to be that complicated. It really can be as simple as going out with your friends and having a good time. You can continue to keep your brain active by choosing activities where your brain actively participates. If you really enjoy sitting and watching football games, that's perfectly fine, but talk about the football game that you're watching on TV. Talk about the commercials. Talk about, past events that you're thinking of when it comes to sports history. Try to challenge your brain while you're doing something and actively participate in it. Any event can be made into a stimulating activity if you try. Learning new skills and stretching your brain with a difficult task like puzzles is also great. I think I hear that a lot whenever people are talking about how to prevent dementia. They immediately jump into puzzles and Sudoku and things like that. That's great if you want to do that. But it also can be as enjoyable as starting a new hobby or brushing your teeth with your left hand instead of your right hand, or teaching someone else something that you enjoy, and then just using your brain in a different way, all considered mental activity. All righty, next up, we're going to talk about stress, and I'm just going to quickly talk about this one and how it impacts your brain health. No one feels their best whenever they have ongoing stressors, and I just want to point out the obvious. It's not normal to feel extremely stressed every day. If that is your reality, that should be a reality check. That's not normal. Our days and our world moves so fast, and you are in control of that to some degree. You can adjust your lifestyle to best fit what speed you feel healthy at. And by adding in habits that lessen your stress and improves your brain health, will just make your life better all the way around. You can do this in a lot of ways. Just some simple suggestions would be through meditation, prayer, journaling, sitting and exercising outside. I heard the other day, a person suggested to me that she has a designated respite space within her home, to where every day she goes to one space within her home to de-stress. So it could be as simple as that, of being intentional about stress reduction in your life and thinking of it just as important as any other brain healthy habit. Okay, so my next little slide, I have just some quick reminders because I know we've been quite information heavy so far. So here's just quick reminders if you needed some takeaways so far from our presentation. Break a sweat, exercise, make it a priority to sweat 4 to 5 times, sometimes people say, but sweat throughout your week. Hit the books. Educate yourself. So if that is attending events like this, kudos to you, but educate yourself on different things. Butt out. Less stress in your life. Do not engage in stress. For me, that is my family's political posts on Facebook. I just can't look at that stuff, so I butt out of it. Follow your heart, which is making your heart health a priority. Your heart health, if it's good for your heart, it's good for your brain. Heads up means staying awake and having no excess sleep during the day. Sometimes a 30-minute nap is needed and is so healthy for you, but sleeping a lot during the day is going to impact your nighttime sleep. Fuel up right, just talking about your diet, catching some Z's, making sure you have enough sleep. Care for your mental health, care for de-stressing as best as possible in your life. Buddy up, socialize, and hang out with your friends and people that are positive impacts in your life. And then last one is stump yourself, like learning a new skill. And those are just some fun takeaways that we have for you. Next up, I'm going to talk about just some future hope in that we can improve our brain health. We all have things that we can do better in. And so just taking some of these steps and implementing it in your life as best as you can. Talk with your doctor if you have concerns and, be honest about your concerns. I think if you, like Ellen said earlier about doing regular cognitive screening, it cannot hurt to just let your doctor know that that is a priority for you and that's important to you. If you want to participate in different studies, there are some really great ones that our local Pennington does. You can look on their website to see which one you're interested in or if you wanted to participate in any of those. And then, of course, there's different clinical trials that goes on. If you wanted some further information about that, just reach out to us. We're happy to share some of that with you. And then our last little thing that we're going to talk about is being Alzheimer's aware by knowing how to anticipate the needs of someone with dementia and how to support someone with Alzheimer's disease. We like to call this being a dementia friend. Because y'all are attending this event today, I am assuming that either you know someone with dementia or you know a caregiver of somebody that cares for someone with dementia. We're going to briefly touch on how to be a friend to those diagnosed and anticipate some of the needs that they might have so that we can better support them. And most of these things can be applied to your relationship with a caregiver as well, someone that cares for someone with dementia. So understand, learn the disease, learn positive redirection techniques, learn positive communication styles, learn when it's the disease talking versus the person and their own actions that they can control. Create and celebrate moments of joy. Recognizing when, even though things are changing, every person deserves purpose and every person deserves joy within their life. And you can be a part of this for your friend, even with their ongoing diagnosis. Connect. You can encourage socialization, both for your friend, but also their caregivers. Caregivers need a break, and creating just a community and encouraging connection for someone with dementia and also their caregivers is so important. Creating a safe space. So this can be not only your physical environment where you're creating a physically safe space for your friend, but also emotionally safe spaces for your friend, where you're flexible and compassionate to their changing needs. Some examples for that would be at holiday gatherings, making sure that the people that are there know how to communicate with your friend, that that you have a space to where if they become overstimulated, they can go in that less stimulating space. If you are out at a restaurant with your friend with dementia, kindly letting the waitress know, hey, my friend has dementia, we may need some more of your patience today. Just creating safe spaces for your friend because they may not be able to do that for themselves anymore. And then getting more information and training like you're doing today. So you're already on the way to being a great dementia friend. And then very quickly, I'm going to go through a couple other 5 quick ways that you can support someone with dementia. Is staying friends and staying connected. Dementia, for both the person diagnosed and then also caregivers, it can be very isolating. And so staying a part of that person's life and helping them continue to do the things that they love, continuing to doing the things that you love with that person in an appropriate way that's still achievable for you, but enjoyable for y'all. That is a great way to stay friends with this person and continuing a good relationship with that person. Make specific offers of ways to help. If you tell somebody with dementia, let me know if there's anything that I can do to help you, that's really broad. And that is almost too broad of a suggestion to get a good answer back. So instead, you can say, hey, if I would love to bring you meals once a week, is Tuesday good? Or I am so happy to drive you to doctor's appointments, just let me know when you need me to. Or it's just some suggestions of making specific suggestions of how to help. Sometimes communicating with fewer words and more visuals can just help with a conversation. And you want to try to avoid saying like, oh, do you remember me? Oh, do you remember how to do this? And instead of testing somebody, really just say, hey, mom, it's Brooke, I'm your daughter. I would love to get you a cup of coffee, and have a cup of coffee right there. So sometimes visual cues when you can, or offer choices when you can. I talked about this briefly a second ago, but choosing places with less noise and just less stimulation is just easier for people sometimes to better isolate all of the noises and just focus on you and your time together. And then lastly, grieve while you're away from your friend. This disease is hard for every single person that it touches, and there are appropriate places for you to grieve. And sometimes that can be with the person that's diagnosed, but a lot of times it's not. And if you needed a support group, we have tons of those. And we at Alzheimer's Services are so happy to speak with you and grieve with you and walk along that journey with you. But sometimes it's not the most appropriate to do that with the person diagnosed. All right, and quickly, just some resources here. Of course, Alzheimer's Services, we are so happy to talk with you and help you and walk with you through this journey. Alzheimer's Foundation of America, they are a national nonprofit that has some really great educational tools. They also have some really great virtual activities and things like that. Your local council on aging, some of our parishes that we service, all 10 parishes have really great active council on aging. So looking into those. And then, of course, our TIPA Snow caregiver support group. That's some contact information there. We got to plug TIPA again because our education conference next week, we're big fans. So if you're looking for more, and if you want to continue along this Alzheimer's awareness journey, boy, do we have you covered. We have our 36-hour-a-day book that any family that's caring for someone with dementia, we're so happy to connect you with this book. It's like the how-to guide to caregiving. Please just reach out to Ellen or me or Ellen, and we're so happy to get that book to you. Our education conference that Ellen spoke about at the beginning of this, it's next Wednesday, and our presenter is TIPA Snow, and it is going to be just such a great day about positive communication. You name it, we're going to touch it that day. It's going to be a good day. Our Alzheimer's Services YouTube channel, we record most of our education and support presentations and slap them up on our YouTube channel. So that is a great resource to look back at some of our past presentations. And then social media. If you're like me, you like your social media to kind of be curated to what's going to benefit your life. These are some dementia gurus, influencers that I personally follow and really enjoy their content. Very education-based, very positive communication about being a caregiver, how to support someone with dementia. So if you're looking for more, those are some that I suggest. And then, of course, we're here. We are so happy to help anybody, industry professional, a caregiver, those diagnosed with dementia. We are kind of the one-stop shop for anybody, for us to support you as best as possible. So this is just a list of some of our programs that we offer here, but Ellen or I and our counterpart Sherelle, we are so happy to walk with you through this journey and support as best as possible. But I believe that just opens us up to questions for our last few minutes. If anybody has any questions, please enter them into the chat box. We are going to have about 10 minutes to answer those now.
Thanks, Brooke. I'm just going to stop the share so everybody can type in their questions if they'd like. And while we wait for some of those questions to come in, all of those resources that Brooke shared at the end, the registration for our conference, information about those Instagram accounts, anything like that we shared today that could have a resource that could further help you, we'll include all of those in the follow-up email as well. So just kind of keep an eye out for that. And that'll be an extra resource you can count on too.
So while we're waiting for some more questions, as we're in the light of educating ourselves and becoming Alzheimer's aware, if you have never been to our office, we have our main office on North Boulevard in Baton Rouge in Mid-City. We have a whole resource library to where if you have a challenge in caring for your loved one, or if you have questions about a particular type of diagnosis, or if you just have questions about a community resource in general, we likely have it here, and we are so happy to talk with you in person if that's what you prefer, or I can mail the information to you. But just wanted to mention that too if you've never been to our office.
So we just got a question, Brooke. I'm going to go ahead and read it off. It says, I'm unfamiliar with what builds up in your brain to where exercise with a focus on sweat in particular is helpful. Can you give me an idea of what builds up in your brain and where I can learn more? So yes, happy to answer this. So what's building up in the brain in that early on slide that we kind of saw with those yucky deposits of the brown plaque and then the tangles. So that is something that grows when Alzheimer's is setting into the brain. It's just a part of that disease. And it's a way that physicians believe causes the brain to shrink. Now, what the exercise has to do is one of those things of the awareness, whereas the more we know ahead of time, so like we kind of talked about here today, the earlier we learn how we can be brain healthy, we can hopefully prevent some of that, those plaques and tangles from building. So really the exercise with the sweating, what that's doing is increasing our blood flow and the oxygen that's getting to our brain. And so what our goal in sharing that is that hopefully we can prevent some of those things from occurring later on in life, if that makes sense. And also too, we can always, if you ever have more questions about that, call our office. We can send you the 36-hour day that Brooke talks about, and we're happy to kind of personalize any questions you have to yourself as well.
And we also have some previous presentations in January. Dr. Owen Carmichael did a really, really good lunch and learn for us where he talks about some of those more like medical terms that Ellen and I, all of those long words that probably only a doctor needs to say. That's it's on our YouTube channel. It was done in January, Dr. Owen Carmichael. Maybe look into that. He does a really good description of talking about the different proteins that build up to cause Alzheimer's disease, if that's what you're looking for.
And in the chat too, Rachel shared a good note that metabolic byproducts build up, and then the circulation with the blood flow helps to clean up those byproducts and move them away. So thank you also for that note too, to add on to that. All right. Will this presentation be available on your website? So it will be available on our YouTube channel, which I'll link in that follow-up email. So you'll be able to access the presentation there on a permanent basis moving forward. And like Brooke shared, all of our majority of our other education opportunities will also be on there. So feel free to watch those, share them. But I'll be sure to link that YouTube channel and this presentation link specifically as well.
If you go on our website, if you're just comfortable going straight to our website, on the Lunch and Learn page, it has a little button that says more educational videos. That links directly to our YouTube channel. So instead of just going to YouTube willy-nilly, you can go on our website too.
All right. We have some really awesome comments in the chat. So thank y'all for those too. I have saved them so that Brooke and I can review them
Thank
once
y'all so
we're
much.
done. Thank y'all. We appreciate that. I think that might be it for the questions, Brooke, but I want to thank everybody for coming today and listening to our presentation. I hope Brooke and I both hope that this had an impact and provided some engagement and some good reminders of how we can be our most Alzheimer's aware. Also would like to invite y'all to join us again next month for our next Lunch and Learn. We will have a professor from the LSU School of Social Work, Dr. Elaine Maceo, and she's going to be talking about LGBTQIA and dementia. So some of those specific issues that are faced and how we can best support that community. And I do see another question that came in as well. It says, I'm my mother's primary caregiver. She is 85 years old and has issues with her hips being bone on bone. Any thoughts on cardio? We walk a mile or so every day. I think, first off, incredible. That's amazing. And I hope to also have the same when I'm 85. I think
So walking a mile at 85. Wow.
I think that's a great start. If she does too have a lot of those issues with cardio that's with some issues with her bone on bone, too, something to consider would be maybe some chair exercise as well. The link that Brooke shared that I'll put into the follow-up email to AFA, Alzheimer's Foundation of America. If you go onto their website, and maybe Brooke, you could add this in the chat too. They have what's called the Teal Room, and the Teal Room posts all kinds of fun exercise classes online. And so a chair exercise is a great addition into that mile that she's walking, but I really think that's a good place to start too. And you're already doing a lot more than the rest of us are doing probably. All right. Well, again, thank y'all so much. And Brooke linked that. We'll also put it in the follow-up email. And if you guys think of any other questions or anything more we can help you with, I will also put Brooke and I's contact information in that email. Please do not hesitate to reach out to us. You can schedule a time if you'd like to come to our office and meet with Brooke or myself, or like Brooke said, our counterpoint Sherelle in person. We're more than happy to support you and answer any questions that you have. So thank you so much, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye.